The dead are under my command, as the death is my domain. I'm beyond the living.
Hello, my name is Kate and I'm gonna tell you about the Lich who ruled the nation in D&D. Szass Tam, a powerful old Lich, a ruler of Thay, and a zulkir of Necromancy who had large army of undead under his command. He was the most influential red wizard who plotted against each and every and ruled Thay with his magic fist. He can be met in different old and new adventures and even video games, either through his followers or directly. But how did he become like that? Let's figure it out. In the year 922, year of the Sprouting Fish, the sect called Red Wizards of Thay rebelled against the rule of the theocracy of Mulhorandi, who ruled the land and forbid magic research. The Red Wizards took the capital of Delhumide and summoned the demon lord Tam to fight on their behalf. Red Wizards defeated Mulhorandi, and that day Thay was found. About 200 years later, in 1104, Szass Tam was born to Szass Tam, a powerful red wizard. He was born in the ancient Thay family, whose bloodline stretches long to the past. Tam was the third head of his family. He studied magic in Delhumide, and his mentor, who had probably got used to the boy, saw a great potential in him. Reaching adulthood, Szass Tam slew him, taking all his possessions, magic books and crystal ball artifact. With it, his magical powers have increased as never before. But Tam also got used to the mentor, but being more practical, he did not get rid of the body. Instead, he raised him as an undead servant who served Zulkir ever since. When Szass Tam hit 53 years old in 1157, he built a bunch of loyal followers, and with them, he killed a 300 years old vampire Narissa Flass, who was the previous Zulkir of Necromancy, and after her death, Szass Tam proclaimed himself a successor. During his rulership as Zulkir of Necromancy, Szass Tam was interested in attaining greater power than his rivals and potential enemies. He studied magic and was focused on research that would bring him even more knowledge and immortality. He spent many years researching immortality and means of attaining it other than lichdom. However, during the war with Rashomon in 1159, he had stopped his research and led his army to the attack. He lost the battle and was fatally injured. In order to survive, he initiated Lich transformation. From that moment, he hated Rashomon with all his soul that is left in him and swore to totally destroy and annihilate them. Unlike other Liches, Szass Tam liked riches in clothing. He believed clothing presented an image, and thus he always decorated himself in the latest and most costly fashions, while preserving his skin from total rot with preservation spells. In public, he masked his deadly appearance by an illusion spell, transforming into one of the tall, scholarly men with jet black eyes and fleshy cheeks not to scare minor humans off, as not all knew that the powerful Zulkir was a Lich after all. In 1201, during the Thaian invasion of Aglarond, Szass Tam killed the Zulkir of Illusion, Nightmare Trial, who he hated for being weak and studying opposing schools of magic. The invasion failed and Tam retreated to his domain, but the death was a point where his major long-term scheme took off. After enhancing his position of power as Zulkir of Necromancy for over 100 years, Szass Tam received an opportunity to increase the loyalty of Thaians, whose support he needed to enact his plan. In 1357, other 10 Zulkirs decided to invade the coastal cities from Thessalan to Tilbrand. They made a pact with creatures of fire who provided them with an army in exchange for creating a permanent gate to the elemental plane of fire. However, after the conquest, Zulkirs didn't keep their promise and Ifriti and Salamanders went into rage. Szass Tam aided Zulkirs to stop the outrage with his undead forces, and together they stopped the slaughter, which was later known as the Salamander Wars. However, peace was short. 2 years later, in 1359, the Tuigan Horde of 4,000 warriors attacked Thay, killing lots of Thaians and their slaves. Szass Tam understood that he and his fellow Zulkirs couldn't win and offered Tuigan the truce. In fact, he offered assistance in invading Rashomon, and I think he was more than happy to do it, given his hatred towards them. In 3 years after that, in 1362, Maligor, Zulkir of Alteration, enacted his own plot and attempted to wrest control of the nation from the Zulkir Council. His plan might have worked, but Szass Tam outplayed and stopped him. To ensure that he would be the most powerful Thayan zulkir that nobody will dare to attack, Szass Tam traveled west. In 1366, he entered Larloch Crypt to find Larloch the Shadow King, the only Lich he was afraid of. Two Liches struck a bargain. Larloch provided Szass Tam with powerful magical items, including own Death's Moon Orb and traded Tarkasil Seed, which could completely bind to the will of any creature who sat on it. In exchange for those generous gifts, Szass Tam returned the Larloch several magic items from the Nazareth era. With acquired Tarkasil Seed and Death's Moon Orb, Tam wanted to permanently enslave Demon Lord Eltap. In 1367, he made an attempt and released Eltap to bind him. However, the plan was interrupted. As a result, major earthquake destroyed much of Eltabar that day. While he was enacting his own schemes, he also did not forget to punish those who betrayed him or he was concerned with. During 1368, Szass Tam can be met in Baldur's Gate 2 video game, where he searched and wanted to kill Vicrus, a Thayan sorceress who hid great wild magic potential from Szass Tam and greatly annoyed him with it. Enacting his revenge, he is back to Thay, where he and other zulkirs attempted to invade Aglarond again in 1369. Tam created a vast army of undead to cross the frozen umber meshes. However, even the swarm of undead could not overcome the fortifications. I think Szass Tam had started to plot it long ago during the first invasion of Aglarond in 1201, when he killed the Zulkir of Illusion, and after that he continued building trust of citizens during Salamander Wars. He needed this trust and their loyalty in order to create a hero image for them to use later. In 1375, he allied with Atrapal Xingax and secretly set in motion a series of events that led to deaths of Zulkirs of Transmutation, Draxus Rim, and Evocation as Nerd Rule, and tried to convince the citizens that he is the only hope to stop the riots if he will be the only ruler of Thay. It took him 2 years to seize the throne of Taymount. The so-called Thay Civil War raged for 10 years until the battle at the Sorrow Keep in 1385. During the decisive moment when Szass Tam had an upper hand, the Spellplague hit everyone, rendering all those who survived from magic powers. Being surrounded by an army of undead, helpless Zulkirs surrendered, becoming vassals of Szass Tam. In order to strengthen the control over Thay and Zulkirs, Szass Tam struck a deal with Bane, who granted Tam temporarily godly boons in return for Lich soul after 1000 years. He was granted all the knowledge a greater deity would have regarding the Spellplague event, the ability to locate and identify even the tiniest remnants of corpse within the realm, and his telepathy was greatly amplified to the unmanageable level. Not only the boons helped Lich to summon his position, but also to erase any other religions from Thay apart from Bane Church, whose followers more or less loyal to Szass Tam. During his sole rule, he found the old Pre-Nazaril book with a ritual, which if completed would ascend the caster to become a greater god like Eo, and erase everything else from existence to be reshaped per new greater god's will. In order to complete the unmaking ritual, Szass Tam had to build dread rings, huge fortress-like structures which would gather and accumulate the living energies around them. He spent almost a century, a colossal amount of resources, slaves and powers to build lots of those around Thay and nearly enacted the ritual, but was stopped. However, Thay was already absolutely drained and those dread rings could not be used again. Decades later, in 1451, Szass Tam agents found Mad Valindra's Shadow Mantle on the Sword Coast, who helped the Lich with his second attempt of creating dread rings to attain godhood and escape the deal with Bane. Since Thay was completely drained, Szass Tam had to think global, expanding his doings. So in 1462, Valindra managed to complete one ring nearby Neverwinter. It started gathering power and rising undead, but was later destroyed. Every year was on Szass Tam count. Escaping Bane's grasp had become his new motivation and goal. While the idea with dread rings seemed to fail, another opportunity caught Szass Tam attention. In 1492, he sensed the presence of millions of souls and unimaginable power on Chult, and sent his loyal and now saint servant Valindra's Shadow Mantle to investigate. It appeared that another Lich, Acererak the Eternal, had constructed a Soulmonger, a machine capable of ascending a creature to demigod level. Szass Tam ordered Validra either to capture the device or destroy it for good, as he didn't want anyone else to achieve what he could not. The Soulmonger was destroyed. So, is he a strong character? From the lore perspective, he's a wizard raised by the wolves, always on the guard, always prepared, always scheming 2 steps ahead of you, with a large army of undead at his hand, with a whole country of resources, and a nation full of followers. So yeah, I'd say that he's a very threatening opponent to meet. From the technical perspective, according to Forgotten Realms setting of 2008, he is a Lich of challenge rating 30 with almost 300 HP, with massive regeneration, lots of abilities and lots of artifacts, including the Ring of 3 Wishes. And I didn't find any spells there, but in the previous edition of 2001 it says that he can have any spell he wants. A minor tip to DM on how you can play Szass Tam. He would never fight alone, so prepare a horde of undead minions of low level who would act as a mid-wall and deplete party's abilities and spell slots. I start the battle with a ready time stop spell to build up my defenses and take an advantageous position. I tried to dispose of the casters first, because Szass Tam was raised in magocratic society and probably thinks casters are the major threat to him. In social, I would definitely use pawns like Thay and wizards to enact his will. It might be good to show that he's always 2 steps ahead of adventurers. He would probably try to politely persuade players to follow his course and bribe them with gold and magic items, and if refused, he will engage in a deadly fight. So that's where the story of Szass Tam ends, and as far as we know he's still alive, so we will probably hear and see Red Wizards again in next adventures, with Szass Tam trying to get more power or trying to escape the Bane's deal. If you like the lore, please press like and subscribe button and tell me in the comments below who else you would like to hear about. And see you next time.